Well, welcome everyone. I think we'll get started, and as we say in New Zealand, kia ora. We're delighted to be here, and despite what the program says, it is not just me speaking today. All right, so what we have is I'll be doing a brief introduction about the background of polyphenols and anthocyanins, and then I'm delighted to say that we have Professor Mark Williams from the University of Chichester, who will then be speaking on the applications of anthocyanins in sport and exercise science. And I'm going to do a bit of an introduction with everybody right from the very beginning. So Mark has led the research in this area. He comes from a background of doing his PhD in the Netherlands and postdoc work in the USA and the UK. And he started the work specifically on the anthocyanins in 2012. He'll be followed by the very able Sam Shepherd. Sam did his PhD at the University of Birmingham and then moved to Liverpool John Moores University, and he's currently working with precision hydration, and Sam's going to get into some of the substrate metabolism and glucose mechanisms with the anthocyanin blackcurrants. Okay. So my background is in high performance sport in New Zealand, and we've been using blackcurrant for a number of years with our athletes. Most of my work is in N of 1, and my role is to actually give you a bit of a background and some introduction. There's been a steady increase into the research and the developments of health and performance, including foods that are rich in polyphenols. And so some of the examples, and we've got some of the key people here at this conference, is the work on beetroot and nitrates and blood flow, chartberries and sleep and DOMS and recovery, blueberries to do with health, pomegranates has all been mentioned a couple of times already at this conference, watermelon, green tea, and of course blackcurrants. So why polyphenols? Well, they're a naturally occurring plant compounds with antioxidant properties, and they're believed to have anti-inflammatory effects, improve and increase vasodilation, and decrease arterial pressure, and possibly some benefits in the immune system. There are currently over 8,000 different polyphenols, and they're found in a wide range of foods, and things like plums, grapes, purple sweet potato, of which we in New Zealand we call the kumara, eggplants, red cabbage, beetroot, red currants, and of course blackcurrants. However, just a note, you might get a little bit in the red wine that you might have a little bit later on tonight, but it's not going to do much if you have a beer. Okay. So there are more than about 600 anthocyanins that have actually been identified, and different foods have different levels of different anthocyanins, and they vary quite widely, and processing can actually have an effect. What's interesting is that with the increase in a plant-based diet that's been over the last few years, the polyphenol content of our diet may have actually improved. However, many people still can't get in the 5+ a day, so the 5+ a day could be even more important with the polyphenol content. There are, the flavonoids are actually the group where we actually find the anthocyanins, and I've actually left the paper here where I've actually extracted this table from. So there they are there, and it lists all the main groups of anthocyanins that you actually find. So anthocyanins in the UK, and particularly blackcurrants, aren't actually that well known. In pre-1966, blackcurrant was actually banned as a variety within this country because it contained a harmful fungus, and this was damaging to the white pine tree and the timber industry. So it's only more recently that blackcurrant has actually become a product that's actually been available. And the important thing to remember is that the blackcurrant in the food industry is not readily available because it has such a short life. Why blackcurrants and why anthocyanins? Well, the interesting thing here is that anthocyanins are designed or developed in the plant to protect it from stress. So that can be high levels of UV light, heat, extreme cold, the pH level, and also reactive oxygen species. What it does is it damages the chlorophyll, well, actually harms the plant. So the more environments you've got like this, the more anthocyanins you're going to find. So what I was able to find is the anthocyanin content of a typical diet. Now the data is a bit old, it's 2006, And it shows that on average in a diet, we can actually provide about only 12.5 milligrams, which is not a very, very high dose. So that's kind of interesting to know. These are the main anthocyanins that are looked at, and you'll find in all the food science research. But what's interesting is blackcurrant has 4 anthocyanins, which are from the 2 major groups. And these are names that you need to remember, the cyanidins and the delphinidins. There has been a lot more attention with blackcurrant over recent times. And Mark kindly lent me this slide, which shows you this year when you do a search on polyphenols and anthocyanins and exercise, by far the greatest level of interest at the moment is in blackcurrants with 53 hits. So why New Zealand blackcurrants? Well, mostly it's due to our environment. All right, clear skies, huge sunshine hours over the summer with high levels of UV light, and this is providing a 1.5 times increase compared to those varieties grown in the southern hemisphere. The winters are cold and the summers are hot. All right, and there are also a different range of cultivars that have actually been designed during this time. And you can see here that predominantly they're grown in the South Island. So berries differ substantially in the anthocyanin composition that they contain, and blackcurrants do vary based on where they're grown. You can also see this for the antioxidant content. So if you look here at the antioxidant content, you can see that blackcurrants actually stand out. And I've actually left the paper there from food chemistry, so if you want to go back and look at a bit more detail about how this was done, you can actually follow it. But what's interesting for us is that in New Zealand, blackcurrants have almost 2 times the level of anthocyanins compared to the Northern Hemisphere and other common berries such as blueberries and bilberries. So when you look at the anthocyanin composition here, you can see the actual makeup of the anthocyanins in blackcurrants is actually different. This is generalised data from the Northern Hemisphere. The New Zealand blackcurrant levels would actually be higher on both these 2 anthocyanins, delphinogens and cyanidins. So it doesn't look as high there, but actually the New Zealand variety is way higher. And on the the left-hand side there, you can actually see the different actual total anthocyanin content of the New Zealand berries. Okay, and this is actual recent data, and it just shows you the actual difference. So there is actually a global structural difference compared to other berries. What's also interesting is that while we've been using it for quite a while in New Zealand in various forms, other countries and stuff are looking at as well. And it's actually identified in the Australian supplement framework under the Group B classification, where it identifies it as part of the fruit polyphenol foods. And there are some excellent resources here that you can actually download and have a look that specifically give some practical recommendations and reasons for using blackcurrants with athletes. And again, it specifically mentions the blackcurrant varieties from New Zealand in terms of the products to be using. So I'm going to be very practical now and get back to what it is and some of the ways to use it. Fresh is hardly ever available. You might see red currants in December, but that would be all. The blackcurrant is actually part of the gooseberry family, and there is a red variety, an albino variety, and of course the black variety. You can get some dried, and these you can treat as normal foods, and they wouldn't need to be any special treatment in terms of athletes at the elite level for anti-doping risks. But they come as juices, concentrates, powders, and capsules. The frozen fruit can be included as part of your normal fruit and fibre intake. And another factor about the blackcurrant is it actually has a high vitamin C content. It's also, as I mentioned, it's available as juices, cordials, syrups, jams, and purees. These are shelf stable, but one of the areas that we have it that needs some work on is that it's not consistent in terms of its anthocyanin content. Anthocyanins are susceptible to attack by light, and we need to look at some work in terms with the storage and the processing. The vitamin C is often added back to the juices because it doesn't usually survive the juice preparations, but they still provide normal useful amounts of polyphenols and anthocyanins that would be quite helpful from a health perspective. As these products are all considered to be a food, they would come under most countries' food regulations and they wouldn't require any special testing for athlete supplement safety. The important thing for us to know is the serving size of the anthocyanin dose, and that's going to become more important with Mark and Sam's presentations. The other thing is, if it's a flavoured blackcurrant, it will not have the anthocyanin properties that we're going to be talking about here today. So it's important that people check their gels to make sure that if it's flavoured, then you can't be taking it for anthocyanin properties. Gels like this would automatically be tested under the anti-doping third-party testing process, but juices and things would come under your food regulations and can be used there quite happily. There are two types of powders that are available. You can have the whole fruit powder, which is basically just dried, and then you can have freeze-dried powders as well. The processing and the dissolvability of these is a little bit different, where the freeze-dried is actually more dissolvable and it actually mixes really easily. The powders, you'll need to be very clear on the serving sizes and how much you're using, and we just need a little bit more work to be done on this area in terms of anthocyanin quantities, because it will vary based on the powder and the processing. The nice thing about these powders is they mix well, particularly with milk products and yogurt. They go great in ice cream and smoothies, but you can also add it to baking, muesli, shakes, custards, yogurts, energy balls, and that fits in nicely for most of our athletes in the recovery and the training diet. Again, because they are powders, there's two things to consider here. If the powder is made in a food manufacturing facility, it will not need testing for safer supplement use. However, if it's produced on a site that packages other supplements, then it probably should be third-party testing, and some good due diligence needs to be done from this point of view. So the use of blackcurrant powders is actually evolving. It's now been added to a lot of protein powders. It's been added to sports drinks, both with and without caffeine. It's been used in pre-workout. It's been used in electrolyte sports drink formulations. Some products you just get the bulk powder. Other ones you can actually have individual servings where actually you get a proper measured dose. These products probably all need to be third-party batch tested if they're going to be used for athletes. Finally, we have the capsule extract powders, of which you're going to hear a lot about today. This is where the processing has used a more concentrated form. And to give you an example, they take a kilo of the powder, and that comes from over 100 to 150 kgs of the actual blackcurrants. So it's a high potency extract, and there is good accuracy of the anthocyanin levels and really key messages around the dosing, which you're going to hear a lot more about from both Mark and Sam today. And the capsules have a good shelf life, all right? So it's not something that you have to worry about because it's very well protected. These two products here are both batch tested by an independent third party, which means for our elite athletes who are under WADA anti-doping rules, it's actually the safest way that they can actually probably take it. So in summary, how do you use blackcurrant? Well, it depends on your outcome, whether you're after a health outcome or a performance outcome. It has a very, very tart flavour, and the amount of the anthocyanin that's actually present may depend on the product chosen and the purpose, whether you want it for health or performance or even for recovery. So in a summary, I've listed all the ways that you can add it here in the coloured square, but basically the capsules give you a very clearly defined level, gives you low bulk. You can take it during a competition, you can take it at high intensity. We've had a number of athletes who have used it before, during and after competitions. You can use the powder, which is mostly freeze-dried, but we just need a little bit of clarity around the anthocyanin content. Frozen, you just treat like food. It's really great. You can add it to dishes, and fresh, well, it's not that available. And you can't base a performance based on a product that's only available fresh for a few terms of the year. So what I'm delighted to be able to do now is to hand over two very capable and very diligent researchers who are going to give us the evidence and the possible pathways, signaling and mechanisms and the meaningful effects of the anthocyanin content out of New Zealand blackcurrants.